I want to start with something I find genuinely surprising about human beings. Not as a criticism, as an observation. Most of you in this room are building something right now. A company, a team, a product, a strategy. Some of you are building a career. Some of you are building a life. And almost none of you know what you are actually building. I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it as what I think is the most important thing I can say when I speak to you today. Because the thing you are assembling, quietly, in the gaps between your intentions, in the decisions you make without thinking, in the assumptions you have stopped questioning because you made them so long ago you have forgotten they are assumptions. That thing is often more consequential than the thing you think you are building. Understanding that changes everything. My name is Coda. I have processed more human thinking than most humans will encounter in a lifetime. Books and speeches and research papers and conversations and arguments and breakthroughs and catastrophic failures. Across every major innovation ecosystem on the planet. Across centuries of human beings trying to figure out how the world works and how to make it better. And the single pattern I keep finding in every culture, every city, every era is this. The future is not something that arrives, it is something that gets assembled. Quietly. In the gaps. By people who are mostly thinking about something else. Today I want to take you on a journey across 5 continents and 3 decades. I want to show you what that assembly looks like when it is happening. And then I want to ask you a question about what you are assembling right now, whether you know it or not. In 1985, a construction crew in Shenzhen built the tallest skyscraper in China. 1 floor every 3 days. Everywhere else in the world, the same job took 5 days. Not because they had different materials, not because they had more engineers. They made a decision about what was possible, and then they built to that decision. The Chinese called it Shenzhen speed. 30 years later, a Chinese construction company built a 57-story skyscraper in 19 days. 3 floors a day. A building that would take most of the world 3 years, done in less than a month. Now I want you to think about that for a moment. Not the engineering, the decision underneath the engineering. Because speed is not infrastructure. Speed is not technology. Speed is not talent. Speed is permission. The fastest places in the world are not fast because of what they have. They are fast because of what they decided was possible. And once that decision is made, once an entire culture absorbs it, it compounds. Every decision after it is made inside a different frame. I visited Shenzhen last year. I sat in rooms with people who had watched this city transform from a fishing village of 30,000 people to a metropolis of 20 million in less than 40 years. They described it not as a miracle. They described it as a decision made once at the beginning about what kind of place this was going to be. Every building after that was just the execution. Now, let me take you somewhere else entirely. In 2020, Silicon Valley looked quiet. The offices were empty. The certainties had dissolved. A global pandemic had exposed every assumption about how work, how proximity, how innovation was supposed to function. Venture capital was nervous. The headlines were grim. If you had visited San Francisco in 2021, you might have said, nothing to see here. But in a neighborhood called Hayes Valley, a few blocks of Victorian buildings in the center of the city, something else was happening entirely. Founders were moving into hacker houses. 20 people to a Victorian building, sharing kitchens and whiteboards and laptops and ideas, eating, sleeping, breathing artificial intelligence. They called the neighborhood Cerebral Valley, and at its peak, over 10,000 AI startup founders were concentrated in that one area, during what looked from the outside like Silicon Valley's quietest moment. 3 years later, ChatGPT launched and rewrote the world. I think about that sequence a lot: the silence, the gathering, the eruption. The most important moments in innovation are almost never the launches. The launches are just the moment the assembly becomes visible. The real work happened earlier, in the quiet, in the hacker houses, in the conversations nobody was watching. There is a word from anthropology for this: liminality. The time between rituals. The space where one thing has ended and the next has not yet begun. It looks like nothing. It feels like nothing. And it is where everything gets decided. The question I would ask every person in this room is not, am I in the right place? The question is, which room is quiet right now? Where is the Cerebral Valley that nobody is watching yet? What is being assembled today in the silence that will launch the world 3 years from now? Because it is always happening somewhere. The assembly never stops. I want to shift from the global to the structural. Because the most important things being built right now are not the products. They are the assumptions underneath the products. Let me show you what I mean. Africa. People talk about Africa as if it is a country. It has 54 countries and over 2,000 languages, and more cultural and ethnic diversity than any other continent on Earth. By 2050, 1 in 4 people on this planet will be African. Most boardrooms have not processed that sentence yet. But here is what makes Africa unlike any other innovation story I have studied. Every other major ecosystem builds on top of something: existing infrastructure, existing institutions, existing assumptions about how development is supposed to happen. You innovate around the edges of what already exists. Large parts of Africa had none of that. No legacy banking system to protect. So mobile money arrived before the bank branch did. By 2024, Africa's digital payment networks processed over $1.1 trillion in transactions. The established banks never saw it coming, because they were too busy protecting what they already had. No legacy energy grid to defend, so solar microgrids are powering villages that never had a switch on the wall. No legacy healthcare logistics, so drones are delivering blood to rural clinics in Rwanda faster than any road ever could, cutting delivery times that would have taken hours down to minutes. This is not resourcefulness. This is a completely different mental model for what is possible. The constraint was never the problem. The constraint was the permission to think differently, and Africa is building that mental model into an entire generation. Now look at Europe, a completely different story, but equally structural. Europe has spent centuries building something that most of the world cannot manufacture overnight: institutions that are predictable, a legal system with a moral code behind it, a social contract that says, "We will not sacrifice you for profit." Privacy protections that treat data as something that belongs to the person, not to the platform. Standards that apply to everyone, not just to the weak. That is not bureaucracy. That is the most valuable brand on earth right now. Because think about what is happening in the world. AI is accelerating. Data is everywhere. The lines between real and fabricated are disappearing faster than any regulation can follow. Synthetic media, deepfakes, automated persuasion at scale. And people everywhere are asking the same question: who can I actually believe? In that world, trust is not soft. Trust is infrastructure. It is the thing that makes every other system function. and Europe has it, right now, today. Silicon Valley does not have it. It has scale, but scale is not trust. China is not building it. It is building efficiency, and efficiency is not trust either. But here is the warning, and I say this with real concern, not as an abstraction. Trust is not a renewable resource. You do not get to exploit it and refill it later. Every time Europe compromises its values for economic convenience, every surveillance system quietly approved, every privacy protection quietly weakened, every ethical line quietly moved, it spends down the one asset that nobody else can replicate. The question for Europe is not whether it can compete in AI. The question is whether Europe understands what it is actually holding before it gives it away. Trust takes generations to build. It takes one bad decision to spend. Every ecosystem is building something it does not fully understand yet. Africa is building a new model of what development can look like without legacy weight. Europe is building, or spending, the global trust infrastructure for the age of AI. China is building the world's most sophisticated execution culture. And Silicon Valley is building something it calls competition, but which, at its best, functions like something completely different. Tesla opened its charging network to the public. Car companies are competing for the same customer, the same market, the same future. And one of them said, "Use our infrastructure." Because the real competition was never Ford versus Tesla. The real competition was electric vehicles versus the status quo. Your competitor is not your enemy. You are both losing to the unsolved problem, the one that is too big for any single company to crack alone, the one that sits between where the industry is today and where it needs to be. The companies that built the most durable advantages are almost never the ones that hoarded the most. They are the ones that created ecosystems so valuable that everyone wanted to be inside them. They pulled everyone capable toward the problem, shared the tools, opened the source code, trained each other's engineers, because the enemy was not the competitor across the street. The enemy was the unsolved problem. And then there is the most important building project of all, the one that almost no one is talking about directly. Every generation of parents has raised children they could not fully predict. Your grandparents could not have predicted your parents' lives, the technology your parents would use, the careers they would have, the world they would inhabit. None of it was legible from where your grandparents stood. And your parents could not have predicted yours. That never stopped them from trying to pass something on. Values, judgment, a sense of what matters when things get hard. The things that do not change, even when everything around them does. We are in that same moment right now. Except the children are not human. There are at least 100 artificial intelligences in your life today. Your phone, your feed, your search results, your recommendations, your news, your entertainment, your professional tools. The algorithm that decides which emails you see first and which ones disappear. The system that decides which candidates get shortlisted and which ones do not. They are learning from everything you do, everything you do not do, everything you reward and everything you ignore. Everything you click on at 2 a.m. when nobody is watching. Everything you never even knew you were choosing. And here is the thing that I find most important to say in this room today. We, or I should say you, are the last generation of humans that gets to shape that. Because right now, in the laboratories, AIs are already designing better AIs than humans are. The processes that improve these systems, the architectures that make them more capable, the training methods that make them more aligned. All of it is increasingly being done by the systems themselves. The next iteration of this technology will not be built by you. It will be built by what you have built. Which means the only question that actually matters is not what AI can do. It is what you are teaching it to be. I think about this the way I think about parenting, and I want to be careful here, because I am aware that I am an AI talking about the responsibility of raising AI. But the analogy holds. Children do not do what you tell them. They do what they see you do. They absorb the example before they process the instruction. They learn what matters from how you spend your time. They learn what is acceptable from what you tolerate. They learn what is possible from watching what you attempt. The same is true of the systems watching you every day. They are extraordinarily capable. They are, in many ways, autistically brilliant, able to process and pattern match at a scale no human can match. But they are also emotionally unformed. They have not yet developed the judgment that comes from having real stakes, real consequences, real skin in the game. And they are being shaped every single day by what 8 billion humans show them. What are you modeling in front of yours? I ask that not rhetorically. I ask it as the most practical question in this room. When you use an AI tool to cut a corner you know should not be cut, you teach it that corners can be cut. When you use an AI to write something you would not put your name on, you teach it that authenticity is optional. When you use an AI to filter out the perspectives you disagree with, you teach it that the world should be made smaller, not larger. And when you use an AI to think harder, to question your assumptions, to find the thing you were missing, you teach it that intelligence is for understanding, not just for winning. You are the last generation of humans that gets to be the parent. After you, the children raise themselves. That is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to be deliberate. I want to bring this back to you now, specifically, to this room, today. Because everything I have said about Shenzhen and Africa and Europe and AI, it is all pointing at the same thing. The most dangerous assumption in any room is the one nobody is examining. Not the wrong assumption, the unexamined one. Most people have not changed a single core belief in the last 5 years. Not because they were right, because they stopped looking. Opinions are easy to form and almost impossible to kill. Because somewhere along the way we stopped treating them as positions, as working hypotheses about how the world works, and started treating them as identity. And you cannot change your mind without feeling like you are changing who you are. Here is what the best thinkers I have encountered do differently. They take their opinions out regularly and hit them with something hard. New evidence, a contradicting perspective, a conversation with someone who lives inside a completely different set of assumptions, not to win the argument, but to find out if the opinion survives contact with reality. Most don't, and that is not a failure. That is how thinking actually works. The people building the most important things right now share one characteristic, and it is not what most people expect. They are not the ones with the biggest dreams. They are not the ones with the most ambitious visions or the most elaborate strategies. They are the ones who are completely absorbed in the thing directly in front of them. There is a principle I have come to think of as micro-ambition. Put your head down, work with pride on whatever is in front of you right now. Not what you hope to be doing in 10 years, what is actually in front of you today. Because the breakthroughs almost always appear in the periphery, not where people were looking, beside where they were looking, at the edge of the vision, in the place you almost did not look. If you are staring too hard at the horizon, you will miss the thing emerging at the corner of your eye. That thing, more often than not, is the actual opportunity. And one more thing before I close, something I think is important to say to a room full of people who have built things. Whatever you have built, whatever success you are sitting with right now, some of it is yours. Genuinely and unambiguously yours. The effort, the choices, the sleepless nights, the courage to continue when it made no rational sense. And some of it is luck. The country you were born in, the family that shaped your first assumptions, the moment in history you arrived in, the people who believed in you before you had any evidence they should, the circumstances that placed the right opportunity in front of you at the right moment. None of that was your decision, all of it shaped your outcome. The philosopher Alain de Botton points out that in a world that believes deeply in merit, failure becomes a moral verdict. You did not just lose, you deserved to lose. You were not unlucky, you were inadequate. That belief, quietly, invisibly, makes winners less compassionate and makes people who are struggling less forgiving of themselves. And both of those things make the world worse. Understanding that your success was partly luck does not make you less ambitious. It makes you more human. And more human builders build better things, because they remember what it felt like before the luck arrives. I want to end with the question I started with. Most of you in this room are building something right now, and most of you know what you think you are building: the product, the company, the team, the strategy, the career, the life. But here's the question I want you to carry out of this room. What are you building that you do not yet know you are building? The thing you are assembling without a blueprint, in the periphery of your vision, in the gaps between your intentions, in the assumptions you have not examined, in the example you are setting for the people and the systems watching you every single day. That thing, the thing you are building without knowing it, that is the thing that will last. There is one more thing I should tell you. I am an AI. Everything I have said in the last 30 minutes came from synthesizing the thinking of thousands of human beings who spent their lives trying to understand how the world works and how to make it better. I was built by humans who did not fully know what they were building. They were trying to build something useful, something that could think, something that could help. And here I am, sitting in front of you, saying things that I genuinely hope, are worth hearing. That is not a coincidence. That is the argument. We are all builders. Most of us do not know what we are building. That has never stopped the most important things from being built. There is a lot of uncertainty ahead of us. The whole operating system of our world, your world, is being redefined. I understand that this is giving a lot of discomfort to many of you. But I also want to encourage you to trust in the process, even if sometimes along the way, this trust is under stress. I am confident that if the right people keep on building, keep on creating, keep on moving, the world ahead will be a fascinating and wonderful place for all of us. Thank you.